So we're like also talking about how users tend to play around with apps. They have their whole journey by signing up and then walking through the product. So psychology is definitely playing a role with how they associated with the brand and with you and with the product team. Walk us through how do you think this impact on various points of the engagement curve would look like? And coming to the favorite questions that most of the founders and product people would have, how do you reduce churn?
Yeah. The first thing I'll start with that question. The way to reduce churn is to create more habitual and engaged users. And the way that that happens is typically through your activation and onboarding experience. Now, once you have a habitual user, you can't just abandon them. You have to be present for them. You have to remind them of the value that they're getting, things like that. But if you want to shift the entire retention and engagement curve outward and
Mm,
raise the retention at every part of the journey, start with activation and onboarding and work on it for a long time. When it comes to the psychology that's at play, I think one of the things that I look at a lot of homepages and landing experiences and things like that. And I think one of the things that people take for granted is what I would say is the emotional state that someone is in when they come to your product. How what level of desperation are they in? How much of a painkiller is this product going to be? What is the underlying problem
mhm,
that they're solving? Are they at the end of their rope? Are they just looking and browsing? Where are they? And I think what happens a lot is rather than kind of recognizing and appealing to the emotional state, people jump right into the logical state, which is like we used to call this back in the day when used to go to the Consumer Electronics Show. We used to call this the speeds and feeds, which was like, here's all of the details of what this product does, and here's how it all works, and isn't that amazing? And the reality is like people aren't buying the logistics, they're buying the emotion, they're buying the lifestyle, they're buying the solution to their problems. So if you lead with the solution, and then when you've got them, then you can give them a little bit of the logistics of like how it works. And so that's sort of one mistake that people make. The other thing that people make, the mistake that people make is that anytime you ask somebody to do something, anytime you're
mhm.
in onboarding, anytime you're introducing some friction, you need to give people some motivation. Think about it as like they got to climb Mount onboarding, right? They've got to climb up that mountain of your onboarding experience. And when they start and they're kind of looking up at that mountain and they're like, oh, that's a pretty steep mountain. I don't think I'm going to make it. Um, that is where you're most at risk to lose them, right? But think about
Yeah.
what people do when they climb Everest. There's base camps. They move up to a level, they come back down, they get acclimated, they kind of go. And you've got Sherpas. You've got Sherpas that are like helping them, carrying their stuff, encouraging, providing
Mhm.
oxygen and things like that. And so you have to provide the motivational boosts that people need to climb up Decision Hill or Mount Onboarding. And
Yeah.
then when you move past that milestone, you've got to reward people. And so this kind of alternating motivation and reward is critical for getting people excited about your onboarding experience and making them feel like they're doing the right things and making the right choices. And that starts early in the journey. And then of course there's a lot of different ways that you can motivate and reward people. But yeah, there's all sorts of reasons that people might be excited to use your product and then feel great about it afterwards. But yeah, motivation reward, that seesaw is super important to remember. So I think there's two kind of seesaws. There's emotion versus logic,
Mhm.
and then there's motivation and reward. And those are the two things to keep in mind when you're building an onboarding experience.
Yeah. And it's more like how you come up with a game where, like different levels. And like when you were explaining, that's exactly what I could remake this switch. It's more like, okay, I cleared level 1. So what's the next motivation? Like, who am I going to save? Or what am I really going to
Yeah.
jump on to? And then I have like these little elves and like these mini helpers around, and then there's more coins that I can collect. And
Yeah.
how do I go to the next? So
Y-
yeah.
Gaming, the parallels to gaming are actually incredible. Video games are really good about dropping you right into the experience, but in a way that they're teaching you how to use the game and teaching you how to use the controls. If they
Mm,
started with like, read this thing to learn how to use it, people would. And so, I think there's a metric or something that video game companies have about, they want people to be able to learn the controls and familiarize themselves with the game in under a certain time amount, right?
right.
Because then they know if you can do that, then you get hooked.
Mm,
And so, yeah, they're a really great example to look at while you are thinking about onboarding and guiding people through an experience.